weren't around anymore, Led Zeppelin filled the voids, and they became the first kind of official heavy metal band.
The legendary guitar players Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton were childhood pals and the undisputed rulers of London's music scene in the 60s. It seemed as if they were inseparable, from their late-night jam sessions to their mutual admiration on stage. Something, however, shifted. Over time, their friendship transformed into an underlying tension that perplexed viewers for many years. The complex aftermath included Clapton's abrupt exit from the Yardbirds, an unanticipated music release, and a romance subplot involving a French model. After keeping quiet for a long time, Clapton has now spoken up about the real reason they broke up. What transpired between these two legendary rock stars then? A young guitarist by the name of Eric Clapton was breaking into the thriving British music scene in the early 1960s. The Yardbirds were a rhythm and blues band that Clapton became a member of in October 1963. The band had just replaced the Rolling Stones as house band at Richmond's Crawdaddy Club. They were originally from the suburbs of London. It was a thrilling period. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and Bo Diddley were among the many Chicago blues artists that the Yardbirds drew inspiration from. Similarly, Clapton was deeply influenced by American blues guitarists such as B.B. King, Buddy Guy, and Freddie King. The Yardbirds' sound was a perfect fit for his style. A sensation was born out of Clapton in no time. His strong blues solos showcased his raw playing style. At the Crawdaddy Club, the audience was enthralled. However, they were also restless. Clapton became known as Slow Hand, when the audience would applaud slowly in response to his onstage actions of replacing a broken guitar string. It was a display of frustration with the situation, as well as recognition of his commitment to preserving the music. Quickly rising to prominence, Clapton became one of London's most talked-about guitarists. A major chance for the Yardbirds and a confirmation of Clapton's ability came in December 1963, when they embarked on a tour with American blues great Sonny Boy Williamson II. Along the way, they got closer to the raw blues sound that they adored. The live performances were full with blues energy and genuine emotion. Sonny Boy Williamson and the Yardbirds is an album that was subsequently published that used recordings from this trip. Although it failed to chart, it became a seminal record of Clapton's growth as a guitarist and the early British blues boom. The Yardbirds recorded live records at London's Marquee Club and signed with Columbia, EMI's record company, by early 1964. 5 Live Yardbirds, a collection of cover songs by American blues artists, was the end product. Although it failed to top the charts, it became beloved by many due to its genuine performance and the rarity of good live recordings from that time. Clapton's dedication to the blues was on full display in his guitar skills. On the other hand, the London session scene was abuzz with the music of a young guitarist by the name of Jimmy Page. After collaborating with legendary acts like The Who, The Kinks, and the Rolling Stones, Page gained a reputation for his technical prowess and adaptability. Clapton and Page respected each other even if they didn't perform together. Clapton was highly regarded as the guitarist's guitarist. Page really respected his dedication to blues music. Clapton and the Yardbirds' lives were turned upside down in March 1965. A pop tune by Graham Gouldman titled For Your Love was recorded by the band. It peaked at number 6 in the US and number 1 in the UK, proving to be a tremendous smash. However, Clapton despised it. The blues music he loved felt betrayed, in his opinion. Clapton was not on board with the arrangement's obvious move toward commercial pop, which included a strong harpsichord. Authenticity, not chart success, was what he desired. On the day the song was released, he took a daring move and departed the Yardbirds. When Clapton abruptly quit the Yardbirds, they were without their main guitarist. However, he would not abandon them without a reward. As a possible successor, he proposed Jimmy Page. Clapton thought the band would benefit from Page's expertise and blues background. However, Page had other intentions. He avoided the intrigues surrounding Clapton's departure and was happy with his lucrative session work. He declined the offer and instead suggested Jeff Beck, a friend of his. Just 2 days after Clapton left, Beck became a member of the Yardbirds, giving the group a new sound. A turning point was highlighted by Clapton's departure. To further explore blues music, he became a member of John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. In the meanwhile, Page persisted in his session job while closely monitoring the ever-changing music environment. The bond between Clapton and Page persisted even after he departed the Yardbirds. It was the start of a complicated relationship that would go through phases of understanding and appreciation, competition, and finally, rupture. Even though they went in separate directions, Clapton and Page remained close, or arch-buddies, as Page put it. As a matter of respect for his buddy and the internal issues behind Clapton's resignation, Page even declined an opportunity to join the Yardbirds after Clapton's departure. Clapton would often drop by Page's residence when the Blues Breakers were on the road, and the two would regularly play together. During these unofficial sessions, two pals would often just play old blues tunes via a recording machine without amplification, slathering on the distortion. Things between them began to deteriorate during one of these jam sessions. The records they produced together in 1965 were very exciting for Page. He gushed about them to Andrew Loog Oldham, who owned Immediate Records and was the flamboyant Rolling Stones manager. Oldham had also signed the Blues Breakers. It was Page's sincere wish that the recordings may be published so that he and Clapton could get credit for their innovative sound, since they represented a new approach to blues. But Oldham had a different take on things. The videos were demanded from Page by him, who used their contracts with Immediate as an excuse. As far as Page was concerned, the recordings were only new takes on traditional blues structures and were never intended for commercial distribution. But Oldham was unmoved. Before releasing the cassettes for sale, he even encouraged Page to include overdubs that included 3 Rolling Stones members, including Mick Jagger on harmonica. The news of the release infuriated Clapton. He always intended for these recordings to remain private. The betrayal went beyond a simple violation of trust. It cut to the core of the artistic and emotional connection they had. Clapton believed that the release was motivated by money rather than the honesty of the music they had made together. Since this occurrence, he has had an overwhelming feeling of distrust. Conversely, Page found himself in a difficult situation. According to his subsequent claims, he was forced to share the information and that he didn't profit from it. Still, harm had been done. The bond between Clapton and Page was severely damaged. It was about more than just the recordings. It was about the trust and loyalty that had previously characterized their relationship. Both Clapton and Page had progressed to greater heights by the latter half of the 1960s. Cream, whose psychedelic blues rock sound Clapton helped create, became an international phenomenon. After much delay, Page joined the Yardbirds in 1966. Together, they would go on to establish Led Zeppelin, a band widely regarded as a landmark in rock history. Their gulf became wider as both men became very successful. Still, further suspense remained on the horizon. It was in the late 60s when Clapton and Charlotte Martin were dating. An ambitious French model with an irresistible charm, Charlotte Martin captivated London in the 1960s. She was born Catherine Martin and felt stifled by her family's stringent regulations as a child. She rebranded herself as Charlotte and relocated to London in search of an unrestricted way of life since she yearned for independence. Many people, including some of the greatest names in music, were captivated by her stunning good looks and self-assured personality. It was at London's legendary Speakeasy Club in 1965 when Clapton and Martin first crossed paths. He would never be the same after that encounter. Clapton was head over heels for Martin, who he gushed about as one of the great loves of my life. The two became a famous London couple in the years that followed. After just joining John Mayall and the Blues Breakers and preparing to release Cream, Clapton was on the verge of becoming a celebrity. Martin, meantime, was reveling in her own modeling triumph. However, there were obstacles in their passion. Substance misuse and a preoccupation with Pattie Boyd, the wife of Clapton's best friend George Harrison, were among Clapton's personal issues. As she struggled with her own need for independence, she felt the effects of Clapton's intense lifestyle. The couple reached an impasse in 1968. The treachery that caused Clapton to suddenly abandon their relationship was Martin's affair with Harrison, as confirmed by Boyd herself in hearsay. According to Boyd, Eric told her to leave, and Martin thereafter visited Kinfon's, the house she shared with Harrison. Following his split with Clapton, Martin made an effort to go on. She didn't meet Jimmy Page until 1970, on her 26th birthday. Heather Taylor and Roger Daltrey were common friends who observed chemistry between the two and introduced them. Page had a more sinister and enigmatic side than Clapton, who was more moody and expressive. His mysterious aura captivated Martin, and the two fell head over heels for one another. Passionate and complex, Martin and Page's relationship was everything from simple. When he was at the top of his game with Led Zeppelin, Page's life was hectic and full of adrenaline. On the other hand, Martin had experience with rock star antics and could handle Page's wild world with ease. Scarlett Page, Martin and Page's daughter, was born in March 1971. It was a turning point in their lives that made them feel more responsible for one another. The feud between Clapton and Page took a personal turn due to Martin, but there is no proof of hostility between the two. Martin had been the one for Clapton, so it was probably heartbreaking to watch her with Page, particularly since they had a kid. The already complex sentiments Clapton had for Page were further exacerbated by the love triangle. Now it was more than simply business as usual. It had taken on a more intimate dimension. Conflicts persisted throughout Page and Martin's relationship. Tensions arose between Martin's resolute independence and Page's rock star lifestyle, characterized by extensive touring and drug use. Martin and Page broke up in 1983 after dating for more than 10 years. Even though they broke up, they stayed in touch via Scarlett, who became a famous photographer. Clapton and Page kept running into one another even after all those years of animosity. For the Ronnie Lane Benefit Tour in 1983, which raised money for MS research, they performed together again. The first ever collaboration between Clapton, Page, and Jeff Beck was a watershed event. I think their characters have become very clear, have become compounded. Clapton's cryptic remark revealed that his view of Page hadn't changed much over the years, when he was questioned about his relationship with Page and Beck during that tour. Even now, it seemed as if there was an impenetrable wall between us. Regarding the aftermath, Page has taken a more conciliatory stance. The publication of the jam sessions, he has always said, was completely out of his hands. As he fondly recalls their early connection, he goes on to say that Clapton is one of the best guitarists of all time in interviews. However, his statements always carry an undercurrent of regret, as if he wishes things had turned out differently. Public tantrums or violent altercations never materialized in the Clapton-Page conflict. A feeling of betrayal that never quite healed, a more subtle, lasting tension was there. Despite the fact that both men achieved legendary status in the music industry, their relationship was a victim of their professions. Fans continue to question if their narrative might have ended on a brighter note, as there is still no concrete proof that they ever really made apologies. The 1970s were a time of enormous success for Eric Clapton's career, as well as profound emotional turmoil for him. Clapton found himself torn between his affection for Pattie Boyd, George Harrison's wife, and his passion for music when Cream broke up and the Dominoes disintegrated. Because of this need and his worsening heroin addiction, Clapton fell into a downward spiral. He stopped participating in the music industry and went back to his house in Surrey. Only Clapton's participation at George Harrison's concert for Bangladesh in 1971, during which he infamously slumped on stage, interrupted his break from music due to his serious addiction. To assist Clapton in getting back on his feet, Pete Townshend orchestrated a rainbow concert in 1973. This event was a watershed moment in Clapton's career and rehabilitation. In 1974, Clapton managed to kick his heroin habit, but he still had to face his other demon, booze. Simultaneously, he started living with Pattie Boyd, which started an unstable relationship that would culminate in their 1979 marriage. Clapton continued to push further musically. His first #1 song, "I Shot the Sheriff," was included on his 1974 album 461 Ocean Boulevard. Less emphasis on guitar solos and shorter songs were hallmarks of this album. The subsequent albums by Clapton, such as No Reason to Cry and There's One in Every Crowd, displayed a less strenuous style, although the singles continued to pour in. In his live performances, songs such as Cocaine and Wonderful Tonight became mainstays. To his already legendary career, Clapton added playing The Last Waltz, the band's final performance, in 1976. As for Clapton, his private life was still in shambles. He hit rock bottom in 1982 as his drunkenness continued to spiral out of control. He told his boss about his addiction and then traveled to Minnesota to check into the Hazelden Treatment Center. In an honest reflection of his darkest hours, Clapton said, "The only reason I didn't harm myself was that I knew I wouldn't be able to drink anymore if I was dead." This confession revealed the extent of his inner turmoil. Clapton recorded Money and Cigarettes shortly after being discharged from the hospital, against doctors' cautions not to. Since he thought that was all he would have left after leaving treatment, he titled the album after it. Although it was the work of an artist still battling his own demons, the album signified Clapton's return to form. Clapton was busy all through the 80s. Hits including Forever Man and She's Waiting were created by him and Phil Collins, and he worked with Roger Waters. He also performed at Live Aid. August, his record that combined Collins's distinctive sound with Clapton's blues rock, was also a commercial triumph. The more forceful tone was on display in songs such as Tearing Us Apart and It's in the Way That You Use It. Just as ferocious were Clapton's solos and Collins's impassioned duets during his live appearances. Tragically, Clapton's journey reached a new low in 1991. His son Connor, who was 4 years old at the time, fell from an apartment window on the 53rd level of a New York City building on March 20th. In his anguish, Clapton said he went off the edge of the world at that very moment. Tragically, Clapton wrote the melancholy song Tears in Heaven in response to Connor's death. He won 6 Grammys for the song, and its legendary status helped establish him as one of the most emotionally vulnerable musicians of all time. While going through this tough time, Clapton found solace in his music. With acoustic versions of both old and new songs, including Tears in Heaven, he released his 1992 album Unplugged, which was a smashing hit, selling over 10 million copies in the United States alone. Clapton subsequently characterized the song as a healing agent, a means by which he processed his pain. Clapton kept developing as an artist in the years that came after. His 1994 CD, From the Cradle, included cover versions of classic blues songs and marked a return to his roots. Reiterating his status as a blues icon, it displayed Clapton's mastery of electric guitar. His 1998 album Pilgrim was an experiment in new sounds. It was his first album with original songs in over a decade. Even as the decade drew to a conclusion, Clapton continued to work with musical greats like B.B. This group includes Carlos Santana, Sheryl Crow, and King. In 1999, he won another Grammy for his song My Father's Eyes, which was written about his son Connor and the father he never knew. There was no fading of Clapton's stature as a guitar guru and master storyteller. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you found this tale enjoyable. To make sure you don't miss any videos, tap the bell to enable alerts.